Please help me welcome Joe Harris.
Morning. I feel like Dux probably didn't need any kind of introduction. Everybody knows kind of who Dux is. I'll give you a little bit of introduction of who I am. I've been working with SharePoint since 2004, but actually been in the mobile field since about 2001, doing work for Sony. I have a number of patents held with them on mobile UX. And so I kind of applied that over the years with SharePoint and in the product field. So my presentation today is going to be focused around struggles, decisions that you have to make as an organization for mobility. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the importance of mobile because I think a lot of people here already know that. And we'll start that with the first slide here. IDC, Forrester, and Gartner are all pushing, and you'll see those pictures that people put together and post on Twitter that more toothbrushes in the world than there are, or more phones in the world than there are toothbrushes. But what's really important for you to understand is how mobile is going to be important for you and for your business. So we feel that, or I feel that mobile is a lot of things that you have to make decisions on in order to holistically implement mobile enterprise-wide for SharePoint. So like this kind of illustrates here, mobile, the first step is deciding that mobile is important for your business. So you see a lot of people in your business using, like Dux said, Facebook, and it's ingrained in their daily lives. How is it important for your business? What are people going to do interacting with back-end systems? How are you going to use it? If you can't answer that, then you probably shouldn't start this journey. Then it's not important. You're probably already providing email to your users. So if that's good enough, if that's enough for them, then you don't necessarily need to start thinking about how mobile is going to be important for my SharePoint implementation. So let's say you decided that in order to stay competitive in my field, whatever your business is, mobile is important. And the first step is defining business requirements. Don't let IT decide how mobile is going to be used, because they're going to do it wrong. You have to go out to business units. You have to talk with them about what they're doing and how they can take advantage of mobile. From not only a SharePoint perspective, but just from a technology perspective, what is it that they are doing? HR, do timesheets need to be approved by people who are not necessarily in the office right now? Those types of workloads you have to get business requirements for from the end users, not necessarily just IT. The next step is probably the most difficult, and you do have to interface with IT in that one, and that's security. And that's a very big hurdle, but there's a lot of solutions in the marketplace that can help you get your mobile users back to your SharePoint servers. The fourth step is the actual architecture and implementation, and that's choosing which technologies, choosing which approaches you're going to take for mobility. And once you've done that, now you can start using it, and mobile is the most important thing in your business, right? So from a business requirement standpoint, mobile users are very, very different than a full desktop user. 8 years ago, a mobile user, if you use that term, they probably did their job mobile 100% of the time. They would need ruggedized devices. They're out in the field. It has to be disconnected. It has to be offline capable. But today, a mobile user is somebody who's just not at their desk right now. They have an iPhone. They have an iPad. They usually do their job when they're at their desk, we hope. But as a mobile user, they're just not there right now. So what is it that they need to do? Well, one of the most important things that has to be implemented for mobile to be successful are very targeted workloads for your users. One really important thing is search. If a user is not at their desk and they need to do something in SharePoint, likely they need to find something. They're out, they need to pull up that quote for a customer. They need to pull up that phone number from a contact list that they can dial from their phone. They're not wanting to go in and wade through the minutia of site asset libraries and different sites and subsites to get to what it is that they're looking for. They should be allowed to use search to find that piece of content and interact with it quickly, because they're just going to either dial that number and call, they're going to pull up the quote, and then they're going to put their phone back in their pocket. So the idea is to provide, again, very succinct, quick ways to get at content for those mobile users, because they're not 100% mobile. They're just not at their desk right now. Security. I talked a little bit about it. It's from an IT perspective, IT has 100% control over security most of the time. And the big hurdles here are twofold. Number one, what are the policies that they're going to put in place that are going to basically restrict you and what you're going to have to live with? And those can be driven by the business uses, so the business cases. So you take your use cases, the workloads that you want to be able to do, you take those to IT and you say, okay, we need to decide what types of technology we can use in order to allow these use cases to be facilitated for mobile devices. So those are the policies. The next is the technology. What technology are you going to use to get into that into your back office systems from mobile devices? And is BYOD right for you? And I think BYOD, when it was first kind of coined 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, it was really it was heavily weighted towards the user. Users were saying, I only want to have one device. I don't want to have 2 devices, one for my company and one for my personal stuff. But I feel that BYOD really benefits the business more than it does the user. So if you think about a user who has a company-issued BlackBerry, not for long, but for right now, a company-issued BlackBerry, and they also have an iPhone. It's Friday, they leave work, and they go home, they take that BlackBerry and they put it up on their shelf, and they put it up on their dresser for the weekend. They're going to take their iPhone to the movies. They're going to take their iPhone to the beach and everywhere that they go. And any emails, and it could be a very, very simple thing. It's just an email that needs to get forwarded to somebody else to, pay a bill or approve a purchase order. But that's not going to get done until Monday, because that device is sitting on their dresser. So I think BYOD definitely benefits the business much more than it benefits the user. The other point with yeah, I totally forgot what I was going to say. It had to do with BYOD. But anyway, I feel that the BYOD definitely benefits the business more than it benefits the user. From a security perspective, and what the businesses are doing in terms of BYOD, instead of securing the device. So the old school way of doing this would be to take these devices, hand them out to users, and IT is in charge of hardening that device. What they're now able to do is harden the service. So BYOD is about providing and securing a service rather than a device. And that's through things like mobile VPN clients, SSL VPNs, very, very similar to what you can do with a laptop, the SSL VPNs, the Citrix, those types of technologies. So I think there's a shift over the next 5 years where even if it isn't BYOD, I think the service is what they're going to be taking ownership of rather than the devices. Even if they're providing the devices, they're still going to use those service hardening techniques rather than hardening the devices themselves. So you decided you're going to go mobile. Now you need an approach. You need an architecture. Are you going to go with native apps, or are you going to go with the mobile web? So I think the greatest part about apps, right now at least, is the culture. So if you provide mobile apps, you know people are going to get them. They're going to know how to get them. Because there's a culture today where if you get anything new, you sign up for LinkedIn or Netflix or anything, the first thing you do is you pull out your phone and you say, hey, is there an app for that? And you find it and you're able to run it on your phone. And so with that culture, you could provide mobile apps to your users and take advantage of that great delivery mechanism. And if you're providing commercial apps, you have a great marketing mechanism in the app stores as well. But they'd start to fall short in terms of maintaining and version control. So the mobile web starts to be a little bit more viable of an option if you have a much more diverse set of requirements and you want to be able to update it, say on a monthly, bi-monthly basis. You have a lot of changing content. And I think SharePoint is a very, very good platform for mobile web solutions because of the dichotomy of content that's served through it. So the apps are going to be very vertical in functionality. And if that's all you need, if you just want to be able to manage projects in a very a single manner every time you do it, then an app might be just right for you. But if you have changing content, then the mobile web, starts to make more sense. And the other thing is mobile web solutions are security agnostic. What that means is you can use any security platform you want, mobile VPN client, SSL VPN, and the mobile web type of solution is going to work through that. So the biggest buzzword today in the mobile web is responsive design. How many people here know what responsive design is? All right, so I'll explain a little bit. Responsive design is a technique using HTML, CSS, JavaScript in order to take a web page, which may be this big when you first design it, and allow it to scale and reposition things. You may have seen sites like this as you make it wider or narrower. Okay? It's a fantastic technique. It's been around since CSS2, so it's been around for a couple of years. And it's really starting to gain traction on the internet. But it has some huge limitations. Number one, you have to account for the full size and the mobile size in one HTML page. So what that means is you either sacrifice capabilities on the full size in order to make the small size efficient, or you're going to have a huge load time for that small size. So I've seen responsive sites that are downloaded by mobile devices that are 2 megs at least, which is a lot for a 3G connection. Now, with 4G becoming more prolific throughout the networks, it might not become quite as much of an issue. But because of having to account for all of the content on the screen as you stretch it bigger and smaller, it becomes very difficult to use responsive design as a technique when you want to do very app-oriented type workloads. So things like collaboration and forms and data entry, it becomes very cumbersome with responsive design. Also, going back to the idea of you need to provide very targeted workloads for those mobile users because they don't want everything, that kind of responsive design is going to give them everything, even though they don't need it. So a dedicated mobile solution, this is kind of your tried and true solution of providing an m-dot or a /mobile site for a site. What you're able to do there is you're able to control the mobile content on what is provided to mobile as opposed to what is provided on the full site. You do have to manage 2 sets of code, so code on the full site and code on the mobile site. But you're able to target that content, so you're able to give a much more application-like feel to your mobile apps. Some examples of dedicated mobile sites, just to kind of parallel that to what you guys might be used to in SharePoint. Facebook, dedicated mobile. Now they also have an app, but when we talk about the mobile web, they're a dedicated mobile site. Facebook, very, very collaboration-based. Twitter, collaboration. ESPN could be it's dedicated mobile, and it could give you a sense of a large intranet portal. But it's dedicated mobile because they don't want to have to account for everything that they put on that full screen. Bank of America, dedicated mobile. Again, very application-like. GSA, if you're familiar with that site, it's dedicated mobile. So, and then if you look at the responsive design side, it's a lot of brochure sites. So it's a lot of sites that are just content consumption, very small. I think one of the best examples of responsive design is WordPress. So their blog sites are responsive. So anyway, when it comes to responsive design, even though it's a huge buzzword, I think you need to take a look at your requirements before you decide to go that route, and then kind of let those requirements kind of drive whether you use the dedicated mobile solution rather than the responsive solution. Now, unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I know we started a little bit short on time. That is the end of that presentation because I talked so fast. But we have 10 minutes, and it's your time. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
There's no such thing as a hybrid between dedicated mobile and the responsive design. I mean, is there a way that you can have both things going on?
Actually, yes. Responsive design techniques can actually be used in dedicated mobile solutions. Now, what that means is you'd be taking into account portrait versus landscape when your device is oriented. So you'd be able to use the techniques, but the site itself would be dedicated mobile. So it would still be considered a dedicated mobile solution, but taking advantage of responsive design techniques. Yeah?
What about for smartphone and tablet screen sizes? Are you finding that the majority of developers are developing one responsive site for both of those screen sizes, or dedicated per?
You know, it really depends. What we've seen from customers is a lot of people who are using tablets are actually happy with the full site experience on a tablet. Now, if you want like iOS design language where you have left panel and right body, that type of thing, you would probably use a dedicated mobile solution. And depending on if you roll your own or use a third party, if you roll your own, you're probably going to be writing it twice, one for mobile phones and one for a tablet. I suppose you could do responsive depending on the content. If it's mostly like publishing, content consumption, responsive design might work. But what we've seen is tablets, people are actually happy with the full site for tablets when it's not collaboration. When it's collaboration, then dedicated mobile. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about mobile users accessing SharePoint intranet sites? Would you have them go through Citrix?
Intranet?
Yes.
The question was, could I expand on users hitting intranet sites from mobile? So in terms of how they would.
Right.
Right. So there's a number of solutions out there. You mentioned Citrix. I'm not particularly smart on what Citrix has to offer for mobile. But the ones that I know of, there is Mobile Iron. It is a mobile VPN client. It has basically a client that goes on the device itself, and then there's a server on the back end that's connection between the two. And the Mobile Iron product provides a secure browser inside that product. Good for Enterprise is another one that has a secure browser within it. And then Juniper Systems has a solution. And I believe, Cisco, Citrix, and Microsoft all have SSL VPNs that would also allow that type of connection. That it wouldn't be a sandbox browser. You'd be using the normal browser on your device. So if you want a sandbox browser that's you're able to remotely wipe and manage and all that, you'd probably want something, one of those container apps like Mobile Iron or Good for Enterprise. Anyone else? All right, well, I gave you a little bit of time back, and thanks for listening about Enterprise Mobile.